Ryan is awake before the day begins, not because the alarm rang, but because his mind is already counting what he owes, quietly running the numbers while the rest of the house still sleeps. The phone lights up beside him, quietly, predictably, and even before he checks it, Ryan already knows it's another reminder that money is about to leave his life again. Before he even unlocks the phone, the calculations are already running, payments lining up in his head, each one quietly reminding him how little of his income is actually his. On paper, the income looks stable, even reassuring, but in reality, the expenses pull harder, draining most of it away before he ever gets the chance to use it.
All across the street, lights come on the same way. Different homes living the same routine, each one quietly carrying pressures no one else can see.
Ryan isn't the exception here. He's part of a much larger pattern, millions carrying similar obligations, quietly managing pressures that have become almost normal. 5 years earlier, things felt steadier. His income covered his life comfortably, and financial stress wasn't something that followed him into the morning. He rented a simple place back then, nothing luxurious, but the payments were predictable, manageable, and never heavy enough to follow him into his sleep. Somewhere during those quiet nights, the idea began forming, small at first, just the thought that maybe it was time to stop renting and start owning. Friends talked about equity, family called it progress, headlines framed it as urgency, and slowly the pressure to buy stopped feeling optional. When the bank said yes, it didn't feel like debt. It felt like approval, like he had crossed some invisible line into real adulthood.
Holding the keys felt like achievement, like security, but what he couldn't see yet was everything that would quietly come attached to them.
The mortgage was only the surface cost, because behind it sat layers of expenses he hadn't fully accounted for yet. Most of what he was paying wasn't building ownership yet, it was servicing interest, something he hadn't fully grasped until he saw it broken down. What looked like one manageable payment was actually a chain of hundreds, stretching across decades he hadn't fully imagined yet. He felt proud standing there, like he had secured his future, not realizing how many long-term obligations had quietly secured him instead. When Ryan married Jessica, life felt like it was expanding in the best way, emotionally richer, financially stronger, and far more secure than before. With two incomes now supporting the same life, the numbers looked stronger, more flexible, and far less threatening than before. Once the celebrations ended, the costs began settling in. Not all at once, but enough to shift the comfort they thought they had. He told himself it was worth it, that memories mattered more than the balance, and for a while, that reasoning felt convincing enough. The long commutes began wearing them down, hours lost in transit each day, slowly turning convenience into something they felt they needed to fix. What started as a simple conversation about saving time slowly turned into the idea of adding another car to their life. When he broke it down monthly, the cost felt smaller, easier to accept, far less intimidating than the full price. In the showroom, the purchase stopped feeling like a cost and started feeling like an upgrade to their life. The moment he signed, the car stopped being an idea and became another long-term payment quietly added to their lives. What looked like one fixed payment quickly expanded into insurance, fuel, upkeep, and costs that followed the car everywhere it went. As the new payments settled in, the space left in their budget began narrowing more than they had expected.
As they prepared to welcome their child, life felt fuller emotionally, but it also meant new responsibilities quietly approaching. With maternity leave approaching, they knew one income would temporarily step back, tightening the balance they relied on.
When work required better equipment, the purchase didn't feel optional, It felt necessary to keep his income stable. Breaking the cost into smaller monthly pieces made the decision feel easier, almost harmless compared to paying it up front. Once installment payments became normal, more purchases followed, each one feeling manageable on its own. As the installments grew, so did the reminders, quietly stacking in the background of his daily life. It wasn't until he saw everything together that the full weight of their monthly debt finally became clear. When they looked at it together, the numbers stopped feeling abstract and started feeling personal. And with their child arriving soon, they knew the financial demands weren't slowing down, they were just beginning to grow.
The pressure didn't always show up as panic. Sometimes it just sat quietly beside him, impossible to ignore. When their daughter arrived, nothing else mattered in that moment. The stress, the numbers, all of it faded briefly. The email didn't come with warning, just a quiet notification that his position was being eliminated. For a few seconds, he didn't react at all. The words sat there while his mind struggled to catch up. When he checked their balance, the margin for error was almost gone, far thinner than he had realized. Even the credit they relied on as backup was nearly maxed out, leaving very little room to maneuver. And with the next mortgage payment approaching, the timeline suddenly felt far more urgent than before. Almost at the same time, their car needed major repairs, adding another cost they weren't prepared for. The repair estimate wasn't small, it was another major expense arriving at the worst possible time. With payments due and repairs needed, he began searching for emergency loans just to stay afloat. He knew another loan would deepen the cycle, but in that moment, it felt like the only way forward. When he accepted the loan, it solved the immediate problem, but quietly extended the long-term one. When they finally sat down with a counselor, it was the first time they saw their entire financial picture laid out clearly. Seeing the total number wasn't just surprising, it was overwhelming in a way they hadn't prepared for. It wasn't just the amount they owed, it was how many years it would take to fully escape it. And over time, interest would wrap around that debt, expanding what they'd actually end up paying. He realized the debt wasn't just costing money, it was costing the wealth he could have built instead. But for the first time, they were shown that there was a structured way out, if they were willing to change. He started learning everything he could about debt, payments, and how money actually worked. He realized focusing on monthly payments had hidden the true cost of what he was committing to. He saw that the same money feeding debt could have been building long-term wealth instead. That night, the fear began turning into clarity, because he finally understood how the system around him worked. He decided they couldn't continue drifting financially. They needed a structured plan to take control. The first step wasn't paying debt faster,
It was stopping new debt from entering their lives at all. They removed their credit cards from daily reach, creating distance between impulse and action. They reduced exposure to spending triggers, removing the constant prompts designed to make buying feel normal. They built waiting rules into their spending, forcing time between wanting something and buying it. Instead of attacking debt randomly, they prioritized it strategically, starting with the highest interest first. By targeting high-interest balances first, they slowed how much money was leaking away over time. Once one debt was eliminated, its payment power rolled forward, accelerating the next payoff.
They reviewed every expense line by line, identifying where money was slipping away unnoticed.
They were surprised how much their food spending alone had grown without them noticing. Multiple small subscriptions had accumulated quietly, each minor alone but significant together. They canceled services they barely used, reclaiming money that had been leaving automatically. They replaced convenience spending with simpler routines that reduced costs without reducing quality of life.
They realized cutting spending didn't reduce happiness. It often made space for more meaningful time together.
To accelerate progress, he began earning beyond his primary job, using skills he already had.
At first, progress was slow, with effort going out but little coming back.
The first payment wasn't large, but it proved the effort could translate into real progress. Over time, small freelance wins began stacking into a steady secondary income stream. Every extra dollar earned was redirected toward debt, accelerating how fast balances began shrinking. He began calling creditors directly, asking if there was any way to reduce interest rates. Some lenders agreed to reduce rates, easing how quickly interest accumulated. Through hardship programs and refinancing, some balances were restructured into more manageable terms. Lower interest and restructured loans reduced their monthly pressure, creating room to move financially.
With spending reduced, income increased, and debt structured, progress began compounding steadily.
When their first major balance disappeared, it shifted their belief in what was possible. As balances dropped and payments stabilized, their financial health indicators began improving. They began building an emergency buffer, protecting themselves from future financial shocks. For the first time in years, he woke up without financial anxiety already waiting. As financial pressure eased, their household shifted from survival mode to presence. With less financial stress, his focus improved, opening space for career growth. Increased confidence and performance translated into higher income, accelerating their recovery further.
Progress became a shared effort, reinforcing accountability and long-term consistency.
Their motivation shifted from managing debt to building stability for the next generation. He stopped measuring success by appearances and began defining it through financial security. They discovered that financial peace often came from simplifying life rather than expanding it. The difference wasn't just financial, it was psychological, affecting how he experienced each day. He realized his experience wasn't isolated, it was part of a larger financial system. He saw how consumer debt generated consistent profit for financial institutions. He recognized how marketing and financing worked together to normalize debt-driven consumption. Understanding the system didn't trap him, it showed him there was a path out. He saw that millions were navigating the same pressures, often silently. When people became aware of their situation, change stopped feeling impossible. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but over time, consistent action reshaped his trajectory. His story wasn't unique. It reflected a financial reality many people quietly lived through. Change begins with awareness, but it moves forward through structured action. Financial freedom didn't come from earning more, it came from understanding and changing how money moved through their lives. The same system that trapped them can be navigated differently once you learn how it works.
If this story resonated with you, support the channel by liking the video, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing for more.